Alright, so I saw Joker, Folie. Deux. Let's talk about it. Honestly, this was a nice little escape because it's been a stressful couple of days. But anywho, that was directed by Todd Phillips, stars Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga. This is 2 years after the first movie. So in the first movie, we're seeing this man's descent into madness as he kind of comes into this Joker persona. And then this film, again, 2 years later, he's at Arkham Asylum as an inmate awaiting trial, and he seems better. At least he seems better until he meets a woman named Lee. Now, Lee is also at Arkham, but on a different wing, I guess you could say. He's an inmate, and she's in residential treatment. Since his arrest and that interesting, live on camera, unaliving display, he's become a bit of a sensation. They even made a TV movie about him. He's a celebrity. You have a lot of people who are just obsessed with the Joker. And Lee is one of those who is just enamored by the Joker. And it's all over her face the first time she sees him. She's like, you can see it's like, it's him. There he is. And he seems a bit uninterested until she does something that kind of brings him back and reminds him of what once was. Well, they finally get a moment to speak, and that's kind of sort of where our story begins. There are going to be spoilers, and I'll let you know when I start talking spoilers. But before we get to that part, you want to know, is this worth it or not? Is it good or not? Should I buy a ticket? The pacing here is just so different. It's so slow, a little lax. The plot is almost missing here. It's almost like there's no plot. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Stick with me. But this is one of those things, it's either going to hit or miss with you. There really isn't much in between. As to whether or not this is good or bad, it's one of those, beauty is in the eye of the beholder kind of things. I don't think this movie's not bad. It's not bad at all. I think it's good, but it's different. It's very different. You're either going to like that different or you're not. This movie is not like the first movie at all. Tonally, it's very different because, again, that first movie we were seeing, Arthur Fleck's descent into madness. And in this movie, we're almost seeing him rise into madness in a way. He's leveled out a bit in this movie. He's almost a completely different person until he meets Lee and things kind of shift a bit. So if you're expecting something similar in terms of tone, mood, and theme, you're not going to get that here. This is very, very different. Even just the structure of the plot or lack thereof, it's just very different. So I said the plot is kind of lacking a bit, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And what I mean by that is the plot here is not the point. The point is the performances. The relationship between Harley Quinzel and Arthur Fleck. That's the show here. Quite literally. And another thing I will tell you, because this is not heavily advertised, there's hints to it in the trailer. I don't know why Hollywood doesn't trust us anymore when it comes to music. I don't know where that came from, where all of a sudden Hollywood got scared. They want to put out these musicals, but don't want to tell us they're musicals. That happened with Wonka. No, I didn't know that was a musical before I went in. A lot of people didn't know Mean Girls was a musical. The Color Purple, a lot of people didn't know that was a musical going in. This is a musical of sorts. If you've made it this far and you don't want spoilers, this is your opportunity to bow out now. Come back later. I say musical of sorts because it's not a traditional musical where the musical numbers are part of the plot. It's not something that's happening on the side. It's different because the musical numbers are against the plot. How do I make that make sense? Folie Deux. So what does that mean? I understand that is French, but I am a Southern American who took Spanish and remembers almost nothing, so don't come at me. What is that? Folie Deux is French for madness for two. It's also kind of a nickname for something called shared psychotic disorder. There are other names for it as well. But basically, it's when two people are sharing a delusion. This takes on many forms, but what we're seeing here is that you have a primary who introduces that delusion to another person and brings them into it, and eventually that weaker person bows out. In this case, Harley Quinzel, is our primary. Plot and pacing issues aside, if that bothers you, this is an interesting dark commentary. This is not Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. This is a different kind of woman, and she is manipulative and narcissistic. And you know this from basically the jump, because he's walking down a corridor when he sees her for the first time, and he notices her, but he's kind of sort of uninterested. But she's like, oh my God, it's him, it's Joker. Like, it's all on her face. She's not saying anything. And then she steps out of the class, and, they come face to face. They're looking eye to eye, and she does something that reminds him. And then we get a close-up look, and she's got crazy eyes. Now, as crazy as he is, and yes, he's on trial for murder, we have a relationship with Arthur Fleck. We know him, and we care about him in a way, because we know that something's not quite right up here, that he's been through some things, and it's just a hard knock life, and we understand his descent into madness. And then we see him in this new picture where he seems to be in a better place, and then this woman comes up with crazy eyes, and she's just up to no good. She's about to wreck everything and ruin everything, and it's almost like a metaphor. She's a vulture preying on this weak and dying man. She's a predator, essentially. And she brings him into this delusion where in times of stress, because that's when it seems to break out the most, in times of stress, they break into these musical numbers almost as a way to cope. And he can dip his toes back into that Joker persona. And he almost has to, because that is the only way she wants to see him. She's not interested in Arthur Fleck. She wants the Joker. She wants that madness. And she wants to harness it, and she wants to control it. Again, we're in spoiler territory, just in case I needed to remind you. But Arthur's problem, and this is why he's so vulnerable, is that he doesn't like himself. That's why the Joker is so important to him, is because it's better than him. It's like a mask that he gets to wear, and he gets to be someone else. But the problem is that the rest of the world loves the Joker more than they love Arthur Fleck. They're loyal to the Joker. They don't give a damn about him. And he doesn't even give a damn about him. But then we get to the end, and he realizes, I don't want to be the Joker anymore. I don't want to be that person. This is who I am. Let me tell the truth and be honest about myself in front of everybody. But this is the problem when you wear a mask too long, is that people love your mask without knowing what's under it. And when he reveals what's under all that makeup and underneath all those clothes, I mean, not literally, he doesn't take off his clothes like that. But once he, exposes himself and he becomes vulnerable, people walk out on him. I think what makes Arthur Fleck so likable is that he is alarmingly relatable. We're all one thread short of just falling into madness, and I think many of us can relate to his search for purpose and meaning, and his desire to just live a life that's worth living. And even though many won't admit it, but those moments where you wish you could just be anybody else. And you figure, maybe if you could just be anybody else, people will like you. They'll love you. I don't know. The pacing is a little weird. The plot is a little lacking, but the performances are incredible. This is definitely a character-driven piece. The question, though, is who is driving? I want Lady Gaga to act more. I think she's an incredible actress. I wouldn't say I'm not a fan of her music, but I like a song here or there. I remember when Bad Romance was all the rage, and you couldn't deny it. But I think this is where she makes the most sense, because she's always been performative and she's always been expressive. I feel like she just does her best work doing this. And then with this role, she gets the best of both worlds, because she's singing, she's dancing a little, and she's acting. But I don't know, I feel like this is where she's meant to be. Not that she shouldn't make music anymore, but I don't know, she's just got it. And then you got Joaquin Phoenix, who does the most outlandish things for a role. I swear on my life. But, I mean, God, he's so good. I'd say a 7 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's definitely saying something.